Okay, this is slide 7 in our 1920s unit. Yes, frowny face, bad things, problems. Yes, so it's just entitled Frowny Face. And we will start with some things going on here in education. Fundamentalists, remember those, the literal interpretation of the Bible people, fundamentalists had argued that Darwin's theory of evolution and the teaching of it and the following of it was destroying faith in God and the Bible. 3 southern states actually passed laws prohibiting the teaching of evolution. So enter into that story a man named John Scopes. Scopes was a biology teacher, a high school biology teacher in Tennessee. He was charged with teaching evolution in 1925. Tennessee had passed a law that said you could not teach anything that contradicted the Bible. Tennessee, again, is in the Bible Belt. Fundamentalist, literal interpretation of the Bible. So you cannot teach anything that contradicts any stories in the Bible. Well, the theory of evolution says that man evolved from apes, that all forms of life evolved from a simpler form of life, and specifically man evolved from apes. Well, that certainly contradicts the Bible, which says that man was made by God in God's image. Man was made from the dirt, the dust of the earth, woman from a rib of man. Doesn't say anything in there about monkeys. So John Scopes, a biology teacher, teaches the theory of evolution and gets arrested for it, goes to trial. Okay? He is defended by a man named Clarence Darrow. Now this is Scopes here on the bottom, there with the glasses. This is Clarence Darrow on the left, right there. Darrow is probably in his 50s. At the time of this. And Darrow is not only defending Scopes, but he believes Scopes. He believes in the theory of evolution. Not only believes Scopes has a right to teach it, he believes that it's right. So Darrow's not just defending Scopes, he's defending what he personally believes as well. Okay? The state of Tennessee is represented by a man named William Jennings Bryan. That's him on the right here in the picture. Yes, it's that William Jennings Bryan. Cross of Gold, William Jennings Bryan, populist candidate for president a number of times, William Jennings Bryan. He is still around, yes. Now he's defending the state of Tennessee. And not only is he defending the state of Tennessee, he is a fundamentalist Protestant Christian, believes in a literal interpretation of the Bible. So you have 2 lawyers here who believe very strongly in what they're arguing. Okay? Now, this is a fairly easy case for Bryan to win. He puts Scopes on the stand and says, did you teach evolution in your classroom? Scopes says yes. Did you know the state of Tennessee had a law saying you could not do that? Scopes says yes. He says, prosecution rests. That's it. The man admitted to breaking law. And literally that's all he needed to do. But this is a much bigger issue here, a much bigger case. Okay? Because this is not just about John Scopes teaching evolution. If it was just about John Scopes teaching evolution, we would not be talking about it, since 1925, all this time later. This is a much bigger issue. This one case sums up everything the 1920s is about. It's about old ways of doing things versus new ways of doing things. It's about traditional ways of doing things versus modern ways of doing things. It's about religion versus science. This case is about the 1920s. It's about the changing society. It's about the changing country in which we live. This case is the 1920s. That's why it's so important, because it stands for something much bigger than itself. Right? So, and as just to to in the ultimate of ironies here and symbolism, really, while William Jennings Bryan and the fundamentalists might win this battle, they're going to lose the war. Because does science keep progressing? Yes. Does science keep learning new things and testing new theories and proving new things? Yes, it does. Science is not going to come to a grinding halt just because William Jennings Bryan is able to convince a jury that John Scopes was guilty. Right? And to prove that, in the ultimate of symbolism here, 5 days after the trial ends, William Jennings Bryan, the defender of fundamentalism, drops dead of a heart attack. Right? Science is going to continue. Religion is going to lose this battle. Right? And William Jennings Bryan's death just shows that. So this is a very significant court case, not because of its long-lasting effects, but because of what it symbolizes and means at the time. Okay? All right, let's talk about the economy here. Economic problems. As the decade goes on and on and on, the economy, we run into a runaway economy. People are making more and more money than they've ever made, and a lot of them are making money on the stock market. People are getting rich buying and playing the stock market, buying stocks in businesses and then selling them when the business takes off. Okay. So let's say you know the guy down the street, and the guy down the street has been buying stocks for the last year and a half, and the guy down the street has made thousands of dollars playing the stock market game, and you think, hey, I'd like to play the stock market game and make thousands of dollars for doing nothing, but you don't have money to invest. So instead, you practice something called buying on margin. Buying on margin. And very simply, it's borrowing money to buy stocks. Borrowing money to buy stocks. So you go to the bank and you say, I'd like to borrow $1,000 here to buy some stocks. Excuse me. And the bank says, sure, we'd love to loan you $1,000 for you to buy stocks. What have you got, as collateral? Collateral is something to guarantee the bank that you're going to pay your money back. And if you don't, then they take whatever you put up as collateral. And you say, well, I don't have I own my house. They say, fine, we'll put your house up as collateral. Okay. So you borrow money to buy stocks. And the theory is you're going to buy stocks, and the value of that company you invest in is going to go up, and then you'll sell the stock and make a profit. And you can pay back your $1,000 and keep all the profit you made. Now that's a great theory, and it works perfectly well, as long as the value of your stocks keeps going up. Well, nobody had any reason to believe they wouldn't keep going up. Throughout the 20s, stocks had gone up and up and up. So people started borrowing money to buy stocks. And as long as the theory plays out, everything is good and fine. But as we all know, things always don't end up good and fine. And we'll get to that in our last slide. Okay. We have a series of 3 Republican presidents in the 1920s. In 1920, Warren G. Harding is elected. We've talked about that before. Harding from Ohio will be elected in 1920. Good man, great personality, very friendly, outgoing guy, not a good politician. Mainly because he's not a good judge of character. Harding will hold a typical Republican belief, and by typical, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying most Republicans believe this, in self-regulation and a laissez-faire attitude toward business. Okay? Most Republican politicians believe that businesses should regulate themselves, that businesses will keep their profits in check. Right? And then the politicians, the government, helps that along by a laissez-faire attitude. Laissez-faire is a French term meaning hands off, leave it alone. Okay? Government's job, according to Republicans, when it comes to business, government's job is to get out of the way, to make as few laws as possible that restrict business. Let business do its thing. Business will take care of business. Okay? Now, again, I'm not saying that's good or bad. It depends on your particular beliefs. I'm just saying it is what it is. It's a typical Republican belief, and Harding is a Republican, as will the next two presidents be. Harding also is a very poor judge of character. He surrounds himself with people that he believes are his friends and believes will help make this a great country. They're known as the Ohio Gang. Harding was from Ohio, and he puts a lot of his friends into high-ranking government jobs simply because he believes they can do it and he wants to reward them for being his friend, right? They're known as the Ohio Gang, and they're more interested in making a personal profit than making good decisions for the country. As a result, they will drag Harding through a series of scandals that we're going to talk about here. 3 of them in particular. Okay? The first one involves a man that's not a member of the Ohio Gang, oddly enough. It's a guy Harding meets on an airplane. This was before we had Air Force One and presidents traveled, by themselves and all that. Harding meets this guy on an airplane, gets to talking to him, likes him, thinks, hey, he's a good guy. How would you like it? So he offers him a job. Said, how would you like to be head of the Veterans Bureau? And coming out of World War I here, the head of the Veterans Bureau is a very important job. Okay, we have a lot of veterans, new veterans here. Charles Forbes will use government money to build a whole series of veterans hospitals across the country. Now, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. The problem was he was profiting personally. He cheated the government out of about $200 million. Charles Forbes will be sentenced to a number of years in federal penitentiary. Second, a scandal, and this is probably the most well-known of the Harding scandals. You see the book cover there up at the top of the page. The Teapot Dome scandal. Okay? The Teapot Dome. Now, this will involve the Secretary of the Interior, a man named Albert Fall, Secretary of the Interior. Now, we've said before, the Interior Department is in charge of the national parks of the country, and several U.S. government-owned oil fields were on national federal government lands, controlled by the Secretary of the Interior, Albert Fall. Fall leases the use of these oil fields, so this is government oil. He leases the use of the oil fields to private oil companies owned by friends of his. Okay. You can't do that. Fall will personally profit over $400,000 from this. You can't sell government oil to private companies, all right? Not without the government knowing about it, and the government didn't know about it. So Fall will spend some time in federal prison as well. The last one involves the Attorney General, a man named Harry Daugherty. Harry Daugherty, that's what AG stands for. It's not his name, AG Harry. Attorney General Harry Daugherty. I just didn't have room to type it. Now, the Attorney General is the government for is the lawyer for the government. The General Attorney for the United States government, the Attorneys General, right? Turns out Harry Daugherty, another old friend of Harding here, Harry Daugherty is selling pardons to people in federal prison, mainly big businessmen who end up in federal prison. They can buy their way out of jail. You give Harry Daugherty enough money and he will get the president to sign a pardon for you to get you out of jail. You can't do that either. So all these people are going to get in trouble. Harding is never directly connected with any of these, but he's indirectly involved because he appointed all these people. He put them into these positions of power, and they're all cheating the government and the American people. Right? Now, Harding will die in office in August 1923. Okay? Harding will contract pneumonia and then a blood clot and will die from that. And when President Harding dies, Vice President Calvin Coolidge becomes the new president. Okay? Calvin Coolidge is known as Silent Cal. Okay? He was a very shy, very private, very backward man, did not like the spotlight, didn't like the attention. That's why he made a good vice president. He was never in the spotlight, but he did what the government needed done. Silent Cal here, you see the political cartoon over here on the right. There's a story of a dinner party at the White House one evening. A woman came up to the president and said, "Mr. President, I've made a rather sizable bet here that I could get you to say 3 words this evening." Coolidge replied, "You lose," because that's only 2 words, and then walked away. Right? Coolidge, while he's not Harding, which in essence is a good thing, he's not the outgoing, personable, friendly guy. Very quiet, very shy, very backward. He is exactly what the country needs, because Coolidge will bring a sense of moral high ground to the office of president. He was a stern New Englander, believed in honesty and morality and hard work and frugal living and virtues and all of that. Exactly what the presidency needed. He sort of cleaned out the office of the president here. Now, while he's not Harding in terms of his politics, he is in one sense. He is very much like Harding, pro-business, and will continue to allow businesses to grow unchecked. Very few laws restricting businesses as they get bigger and bigger as the decade goes on.